true that folks are stealing? They're stealing everywhere. Because when you cut jobs in people's communities and folks want to figure out how do I provide for my kids.
You kind of conflated that, bud. The word provide doesn't mean stealing, but, you know, let him roll.
Or if I can go to a store and steal a loaf of bread. Is stealing right? No. But what's wrong is first-degree corporate abandonment. Walgreens should be charged with first-degree corporate abandonment. Yes. It should be a crime the way they're treating our elders. Yes.
Okay, so what you're watching here is people in the community are upset because the theft has been so big at Walgreens that they're like, we're done. We're closing the store. You people can kiss our rear ends. We are not going to have this kind of theft on a daily basis. So instead of whoever this guy is coming out and saying, hey, listen, we need to make sure our people don't act like hoodlums. Nope. That's not what he's saying at all. He's saying it's Walgreens' fault. It's corporate abandonment, which I never heard of before. And I'm offended as a black person that he would be saying this in public instead of looking at the knuckleheads and people who are stealing. Oh, yeah, I know it's stealing, but no, there's no but. That part has to be eradicated. You want to have commerce in your community? You need to fix the way that people think.
It's a crime the way they're treating our families.
Tell me about Defend District 9. What are you doing right now?
Yes, we want.
You recognize him? That was the guy I just showed you not even, I don't know, a couple 30 minutes ago. That's the guy right there who cussed out the cop. And so now he's talking to the media about how it's, you know, it's all Jim Crow.
People go to defenddistrict9.com. We're preserving and fighting to preserve our congressional representation and stop the racist gerrymandering that's being proposed.
Yeah. You're calling it racist. Help me understand why this is viewed as racist in your eyes.
This is the only black majority district in the state of Tennessee. After the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, this is where the state of Tennessee decided to attack first. Black.
So, that's a black district. So you're fighting for black representation. Well, that's very interesting that he would say that he was fighting for black representation. Let me show you who currently is the elected congressional representative for that area. Should I show you? Okay, let me just show you who it is. And there he is. That's who represents Memphis. Congressional Representative Cohen, who brought a chicken bucket to a congressional meeting. And he's the guy that actually represents the black community.
Representation, and we know that's happening in Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and it's going to be happening all across our country. We have to defend our right to representation and our voices in Congress, in the State House, and in elected office.
Why do you think Republicans are moving forward with this effort? And give me a response to President Donald Trump's involvement in this. We, of course, know that he kind of directed the governor to do this.
Exactly. Donald Trump is a white supremacist domestic terrorist who is...
It ain't working no more, bud. You got to come up with a different game. You domestic terrorists and white supremacists, and it might help with the few people behind you carrying signs, but the rest of America is done with your Jim Crow BS. The whole Jim Crow stuff is one of the biggest lies that the left keeps pushing. They keep comparing everything, every little thing, to Jim Crow. And they're doing it on purpose with great intent. They're intent on misinforming people because they know these kids who can't even read have no idea what Jim Crow was. So they do it to rile up their base. They understand the words that they're saying. They do it to divide America and to keep themselves in power. That has nothing to do with Jim Crow. If you're my age or thereabouts, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They call voter ID laws Jim Crow 2.0. They call school choice Jim Crow 2.0. They call police enforcement and ICE Jim Crow 2.0. They blame everything, every problem in the black community on racism. instead of looking in the flipping mirror. Even with them closing the Walgreens stores, they're complaining and saying it's Jim Crow. While he said, yeah, they're stealing us blind.
Seeking to destroy our democracy by any means necessary, including by usurping democracy itself and the voices of the people. And Governor Bill Lee, Cameron Sexton, and Lieutenant Governor McNally have all decided to join him in this effort to destroy our democracy, to take away our voice, and to attack black people and black representation. And that's wrong.
The racial turnout gap since Shelby versus Holder 2013 has gotten wider. The Supreme Court said in their decision that we don't need these things because that racial turnout gap has all but disappeared. It is a lie.
I couldn't imagine going to church and hearing that. The right Reverend Warnock decides he's going to bring the political aspect of things to the pulpit, instead of focusing how to win despite any real racism that still may exist. It exists. It shouldn't bother you. It shouldn't stop you from being who you are. And at that point, you have to cut through all this BS and remember or learn what Jim Crow really was. Because these nut jobs, these so-called progressive Democrats, these socialist bonkers, bozos, they don't want you to know history. They want you to know supposition and what they think is history. They want to rewrite it. They don't know the real Jim Crow. Jim Crow was a system of laws mainly in the South from the late 1800s up until when? The mid-1960s. Now, here's where it gets really important in case you don't know what Jim Crow is. And tell me, if, as I tell you some of this stuff, if you look at this and go, that's still go, no, that doesn't happen anymore. Oh, no, that doesn't happen anymore. Jim Crow was a proponent and a ideology of racial segregation. White only, colored only. You had to separate. You had to look at this water fountain. You had to sit in these seats. You couldn't sit in this place in the bus, which is really funny because now when you see a bus in the inner city, all the brothers go and want to be in the very back. Even though Rosa Parks fought to sit up front, where they want to go? All the way to the back. There were separate drinking fountains. There were separate schools. There were separate school buses. There were separate everything. It was basically legal apartheid back then. And it was backed by the full force of the states. Whichever state wanted to do, they would do it. It stripped Black Americans of basic rights of voting. Black Americans couldn't own property. They couldn't get a fair shot. Dare I, you couldn't be with a white woman. It was ugly. It was wrong. And it was real. It was real racism. But as I sit here, as you heard all the painful stuff about racism, is there any restaurant that says blacks got to eat at different tables? No, I hear you talking that about MAGA. You throw MAGA out of a restaurant because you don't want them eating at the tables. They want them in a restaurant. I don't know. Is there any law on any state books that says black people have to ride in the back of the bus? No. Is there a sign on a bathroom anywhere in the country that says black people have to use a separate bathroom? Nope. Is there any law anywhere that, there may be, but that gets enforced and says black people can't marry white people? It'd be surprising to me because I live in the South and I have a Southern woman as a wife, and she's white. So how can it be Jim Crow 2.0 when all of Jim Crow 1.0 doesn't exist anymore? Black people can own property. Black people can own businesses. Where's the Jim Crow 1.0? It's gone. That system was destroyed. And every time these idiots get up here and say this stuff all over again, they're doing it with the sole intent to poison people's minds. And unfortunately, they're poisoning a lot of people's minds. And just like when they were saying everything was fascist, now everything is Jim Crow 2.0. And the people they're talking to not only have no idea what the hell fascism is, they don't know what Jim Crow is. Just sounds right. You could even ask them, can you explain to me what Jim Crow was? I don't know. I don't know. And how does it still exist? I don't know. It doesn't. And now the Supreme Court has said it doesn't exist. And they're fighting because they're the ones who want Jim Crow.
It is a bald-faced lie. Yes, I won my race. I run statewide. Yes, we got black folk in high political office. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg was right when she said it's like removing your umbrella in the middle of a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. They removed that umbrella, and that racial turnout gap has gotten wider, and it's gotten wider twice as fast.
The racial turnout gap is because the umbrella no longer is shielding black people, or because, I don't know, people in the hood don't give a shit and don't go vote. Hey, I want to take a second and tell you about the sponsor of today's video. Did you know that U.S. life expectancy peaked at 78 years old in 2014, and it's now declining worldwide because we're aging faster than ever? Toxins, chemicals, and modern stressors are hitting us really hard. But scientists discovered kimchi actually slows aging at the cellular level. Now you can get all that power in one capsule, Kimchi One. Over 900 probiotic strains plus antioxidants and enzymes that support digestion, metabolism, skin health, and immunity. 100% made in the USA, all natural, non-GMO. Click the link below in the description and use code Barry for 25% off, or call 888-418-6738 right now for up to 50% off plus free shipping. Feel younger starting today with Kimchi One from Brightcore. Now back to the video. Because what you're saying is they're not able to turn out. The turnout gap is so big because we don't have the umbrella of the civil rights. When in essence, nobody's stopping people from getting up and go vote. And that's not just a black thing. You know what the voting rate in your neighborhoods are. You know what the apathy is like across your neighborhood. Hey, Jim, you going to vote? No, I'm going on the boat. All right, see you later. You don't have to be black or white. You just be completely apathetic. And unfortunately for these people, the apathy has grown to the point where nobody wants to come out and vote for you. Crazy, crazy.
In states that used to have to pre-clear their changes, same folk who used to discriminate are still discriminated while they're saying things have changed. Then on Wednesday, they said, well, I tell you what, we're going to play with the lines. They didn't learn from the earlier decision. They watched the racial voter turnout gap get larger, and then they came back on Wednesday and they said, we're going to allow partisan politicians to gerrymander you. So that
I'm not sure what day of the week, Wednesday, but the Wednesday, they came out and said, no, we are now no longer going to allow you to use race as the reason. If you truly, as a preacher in a black community, want people to overcome, well, I remember, as many of you, that the whole idea about overcoming was to be treated based on the content of your character, not as somebody who's mad because Walgreens is gone. I know personally, as well as you know black entrepreneurs. You know black doctors. You know black lawyers. You know black CEOs. You even know a black president. We elected one twice. It's in a country that supposedly has Jim Crow right now. We have a black president who got elected twice. We had a vice president who lost, but she was able to run for president. By the way, I don't know if you want to tell anybody, but she's married to a white Jew. Oh, man, that Jim Crow just really changed, didn't he? Kamala Harris is married to a white Jewish man. Somehow nobody likes to talk about that too much. We have NBA players that are close to billionaires. We have NFL players that are making all kinds of money. Oh my gosh, we just watched Jay-Z and Beyonce go to an event. Both of them are black. And he had on a $4 million watch. Man, I wish I could get some of that Jim Crow. I really wish I could enjoy some of that Jim Crow. It's behind us. I don't know who the commonality of the people that this guy is even talking to. When you got a black man and his black wife and his black kid can go to a gala in the middle of Manhattan and wear a $3.5 million watch, I'm pretty sure that means Jim Crow circled the toilet years ago and got flushed. But they can't let this go, because if they admit Jim Crow is dead, if they admit that, they lose one of their best weapons, the race card. So they've now invented new Jim Crows, Jim Crow 2.0. It'll pretty much turn into Jim Crow 3.0 pretty soon. Because if they get the voter ID, oh, yeah, I'm telling you in advance, Jim Crow 4.0 will be out here.
Even when you show up, your voice won't have as much impact because we'll play with the lines. That isn't a new method. That's an old method. That's a Jim Crow method. That's 19th and 20th century methodologies in a 21st century world. Let me make it plain for you. That's Jim Crow in new clothes.
Let me make it plain for you. Guess what, right, Reverend? If it was Jim Crow, your ass wouldn't be on a pulpit saying all this stuff. If it was fascism, you wouldn't be saying all this stuff. Matter of fact, you're in Georgia. When you go to a plane and go back to Washington, D.C., your little tardy ass wouldn't be able to get on a plane without an ID. When you opened up your bank account so you can deposit all the money from the parishioners, you had to have an ID. Can't even get cough medicine without an ID. I know. I just had to get some last week. Suppression? Give me a break. They say crime-free housing rules are Jim Crow because they don't want you to notice that the real problem is something they completely avoided. You see, back then when it was Jim Crow, the one thing that we don't have as black people that they had back then is they had fathers in the homes. They weren't 75% of black women weren't having babies without a man. This is worse than Jim Crow. Back during Jim Crow, there wasn't any gang violence, and black people weren't shooting each other the way they are now. It's worse than Jim Crow right now in the hood, and white people ain't got nothing to do with it. You have a culture that glorifies thug life and taking instead of hard work. It wasn't like that back in the day because I know how hard my father and uncles worked, and they were black men. It's worse now than it was in Jim Crow in that regard. See, back then, my father, my uncles couldn't blame racism for every disparity. There's no way you could raise a family if you were always looking to, stand on a crutch. You had to keep fighting your way through it. Every test score right now, every wealth gap, instead of looking at why is it this way, it's pointing personal responsibility and trying to put it on somebody else's head. People in your pulpit in your congregation, ask them, how many of you guys are on food stamps? How many of you guys are on welfare? How many of you guys, have this and that and Medicaid and all this kind of crap? Raise your hands. It wasn't like that in Jim Crow. We actually had to work. How many of you out here have two-parent households? No, don't want to ask those questions, huh? It's Jim Crow now because they put different lines on the board. How many of you have a high school education? How many of you have a college education? How many of you have jobs? How many of you have gotten a promotion where you work instead of because just because you were black, you earned it, you have merit? It hurts me when I hear these kinds of things because you're basically telling people, I'm not good enough to compete with you, which is different than any way I was raised back in the day. I remember my mom and dad saying, you can do whatever you want. Many parents say that. Many parents don't mean it. Many parents think it's a rite of passage just to say that to kids. I actually had to do it. I told you the story. I wanted to play football. I remember playing sandlot football and destroying kids. And I went to the doctor and he's like, you can't get we're not going to let you play. Your blood pressure looks a little bit too high. And I went home and I cried. And my father looked at me and said, we're going to take you to another doctor, and then you're going to get yourself in shape. Because you have to overcome an impediment, not succumb to it. I have always been in the overcome a problem instead of the succumb to a problem. See, Jim Crow allowed people to overcome problems, and you people are putting them back in there and saying it's somebody else's fault. Yes, there was slavery. Yes, there was racism. Yes, there was Jim Crow. I've done my best to make sure my daughter, Ashley, doesn't know anything about that. Not from an educational perspective, but instead saying, you can do whatever you need to do. And I told you the story. I told her when she was a little girl, don't ever say the word can't to me. I don't want to know can't. Can you show me how? Can you help me? I'm having a problem. And you get these idiots.
Why is the left so crazy? Is it Trump derangement syndrome? That's what everybody says. I think he's a catalyst in some ways. His legacy, his greatest legacy, maybe he destroyed the Democratic Party, turned them into Jacobins. But I think the real...
I didn't even know what a Jacobin was. I'm like, oh, hold on. Oh, hey, Victor, hold on. You tested me on that one. A Jacobin? I got to go look that up.
The thing is that they know deep down inside that their protocol, their blueprint, their agenda does not work. And they know it.
That's it. See, they've gone so far being the party of victimhood. It worked. They were able to keep black voters in a permanent state of anger. It's racist. You don't have any money. You can't get ahead because of the white man. I got to keep you angry. I got to keep you like a mushroom. Instead of telling people, ask the right questions. They don't look at failed policies. The welfare state, the crime-ridden cities run by these Democrats for decades. Go look at the facts. Under President Trump, before the China virus, black unemployment hit historic lows. How could that be if he's such a fascist or racist? Black ownership of businesses was up. Black Americans were winning criminal justice reform. Opportunity zones still exist. I drove around one with Ashley. There's another one in Delray Beach, and there's all kinds of opportunity. Who's out there? White people. Well, why aren't there black people taking advantage of the opportunity zones? I have no idea. Because opportunity is not a handout. Opportunity is a way for you to move forward. And what do the Democrats do? They call it racist. They riot, they burn cities, they tell people you got no way out. We got to blame it on something systemic racism. And now they want to rile everyone up all over again with these Jim Crow comparisons because they got nothing else.
Doesn't work because everywhere it is employed, people leave. They leave. And every time you turn on the television, there's somebody screaming and yelling and threatening violence or just whining. It's on the left. Every single time.
And grift is the central practice of the party.
Yes, and I think they know it. I think they know that
They damn sure know it. This is why they're screaming in Tennessee. This is why the guy screamed at the cop, Mr. Eraserhead. They know it. They know their policies have failed, not just since Wednesday, not since last week. Their policies have failed for decades. They were able to hide it. Now, open borders, inflation, crime, woke schools, teaching kids to, lop off their junk and hate America and river to the sea and all this stuff. They always fall back on the same old playbook. The thing I think that they didn't realize is, like with any good football team, baseball team, basketball team who watches game film, I don't think the Republicans used to watch game film because they seem to be surprised every time the playbook was run on them. How many times are you going to run that end around when I would have to recognize, because I've watched the film, here it comes again. Trump, metaphorically, watch the game films. Stephen Miller, metaphorically, watch the game films. And you get to a point where once you know what those game films show you and you can count on them, if you've ever been around anybody who understood and how to scout and look at things, and people would tell you about Peyton Manning and Ray Lewis said he knew the plays before the team snapped the ball. I know what you're going to do, and I'm going to meet you over here in the hole, and I'm going to blast your running back because I watched the film. I know what you're going to do. I don't even have to be faster than you. I don't even have to be much stronger than you because I already know what's going to happen. And so I think President Trump somewhere went and said, well, we've got their playbook. They've been running the same playbook for decades. There's nothing new here. It's funny, SV the other day when I was like, what are they going to do? SV read the playbook. He's like, they're going to go back to Epstein. Damn if they didn't do it. Right back to Epstein. See, that's the kind of thing that should make you go, wow, we are really winning. They got nothing. There's nothing new. There's nothing new coming out. No different arrow coming out of that quiver. And some of you at this point have to realize it. Do they really? It's almost like you get in a fight and you get hit. That's all you got? Is that really all you got? You're in big trouble now because that's it. There's nothing left in their playbook. We know that they're violent. We know they're going to riot. They know they're going to protest. You know they're going to call people racist. You know they're going to say Jim Crow. You know they're probably going to get a little bit violent. They're going to burn something. What's new? If you know everything I just said, what the hell can they do to you because you know it's coming? I don't know if many of you sat back and looked at that way and went, yeah, we know their whole playbook. But the problem is they don't know Trump's. And every single day, like SV read the story, I'm going to fine you $100,000. And if, we're going to hit you with $1 million. And we're going to do this. They've never seen our playbook. In fact, many of us haven't seen it. We're like, damn. Coach is pulling out some plays. Like, wow, we didn't see that one coming. The old way is done. The pollsters can't work. The Democrats can't work. And a lot of Republicans can't work. They don't know what to do. This guy called Trump and MAGA. And I'm seeing it very clear for the first time is it's over. They don't know it's over, but it's over. Oh, Barry, how can you keep seeing those? Hey, Barry, how can you be so confident? Because I'm looking at it. I'm watching the game film.
You have to say things that are just crazy because nobody wants us, if they were rational and they said, well, this is our agenda. We want to shut down the fossil fuel industry and go into massive wind and solar. We would like abortion on demand up to the birth canal delivery. We want trans men in women's sports and in locker room. We want an open border. We don't believe in borders. 10 or 12 million people will refresh us every year. We don't want no cash bail. They would know what people would say. Shoplifting's not a crime if you careful to steal less than $950.
That's insane. Just steal under 900 and everything's fine. What did he say? Let me let him finish. I'm going to tell you what he's actually saying.
Nobody would vote for that. So it has to be that Donald Trump is fascist. He's Hitler. Charlie Kirk has to be eliminated, all of that stuff. And yet that's not going to work.